Welcome to Cowgirl Talk, where we empower you to live authentically through real food, real talk, and real life. Brought together by our love of cows.
We're your hosts, Emily, a farmer and rural-ish girly from Wisconsin.
Haley, a food blogger and dairy farmer's daughter from New York.
And Emily, a dairy lover and personal trainer living in Florida. Happy post-National Farmers Day. Welcome to our second episode of Cowgirl Talk, which is one of our Ag Chat episodes where we help you understand more about the food you eat and the people who raise it.
To start off our episodes, like we said, we are going to share a little bit of our happy crappies situation. And the happies for all of us is all of the love we received after our first episode. We were talking earlier, and we are all the type of people, well, I feel like everyone's like this, where you're just so hard on yourself and you're your own worst critic. And so seeing all the positive responses definitely helped boost our morale a little bit. So thank you all for tuning in and sharing with us and, just giving us all the positive vibes. But we would not be podcast hosts without saying, because of all the positive vibes, please leave us reviews, tag us in stories, screenshots, all the things of you guys listening. It is super good to help get the word out about our podcast, especially now as we are starting it, because we're just trying to get our feet on the ground and get going. So we appreciate all the love and can't wait to see more of it. I don't know if that's okay to say, but that's what I'm going to say. We can't wait to see all the love from you. Like I posted after World Dairy Expo, feed me a grilled cheese and tell me I'm pretty. Listen to our podcast and tell us we're good. Okay, let's get into our own happy crappies though. Emily, down in Florida, what's the status of your happy crappies?
Yes, so my happy crappies are fun ones for the week. So I have really gotten into reading the past 2 years, and this year I've been on a huge fantasy romance kick, as I'm sure most of Book Talk has been, but I needed a little bit of a break. I just finished Fourth Wing. I'm going to start the second one when it comes out beginning of November. So in between, I wanted to get back into my spicy books, and I've seen so much about this first book. It's called Haunting Adeline, and then there's a second book. It's kind of a cat and mouse duet, they call it. So it's Haunting Adeline and then Hunting Adeline. They're very twisted and dark spicy books, apparently. So that's a warning to anyone out there. If you're going to dive into it, be ready. I've not started yet, but that's my happy. And then my crappy is not necessarily a terrible crappy, but post World Dairy Expo, post Cow Show, I feel like everyone always gets a little bit of the crud, gets a little bit of the sickness. I don't know if it's that or allergies, but either way, I'm feeling a little bit stuffed up. And I'm not loving it, but we're definitely making it through.
Haley, what about you?
My happy is, this has just been a fun kind of celebration week. It was Connor's birthday over the weekend, my fiance, so that was a lot of fun celebrating him. And then, this is super corny, but just who I am as a person, we celebrated 1 year of being engaged this week, so it was fun. We went back to the beach where he proposed, and just, yeah, it was really enjoyable and just fun I love celebrating little things, so that was fun. Nice to make memories there. And crappy is probably just this, you open this episode with kind of just being hard on yourself. I feel like it's been kind of just I've been in a meh kind of mood or mindset the last week or so of around work and everything, and the comparative game and imposter syndrome. So slowly coming out of that funk, and just, I think it's the weather changing and it's getting darker, and it's kind of just all contributes to it.
Yeah, you and I have talked about, we're going to have an episode later on of wintertime sadness stuff, because it is real.
It's coming.
My happy is this weekend, my friends and I, so four of us, 3 plus me, we all have October birthdays. We call ourselves the Soup Babes. And so we are doing a party bus this weekend for all of us. And so I am excited. The theme is biker chick though, and I am struggling to figure out an outfit. So I have lots of stuff coming from Amazon to try. And I've been okay, I don't know if you guys do this, but I don't want to just buy things to wear once. So I've been trying to figure out pieces that I can use to make this outfit work. But I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be super fun. And then my crappy is creepy old men on the internet, because as somebody in agriculture who posts right now currently a lot of agriculture content, you just get comments from the old men, and it's just gives me the ick.
So
Very much the ick.
Yeah.
So if we see Emily in a biker jacket next week, it's because she's repurposing the outfit that she wore.
Yes.
Don't need a capsule wardrobe.
I will be loading trucks in my biker chick outfit.
You'll definitely get the comments then, probably.
Yeah.
I love Happy
No
Crappies.
kidding.
It's just like a nice way to highlight everything. But I guess we'll just dive right into the episode topic. And this is our first kind of like ag chat. There's going to be, you know, girl talk, but also ag chats. And this is kind of us diving into the first one. And this one is passing National Farmers Day, actually. So happy late National Farmers Day. We're super excited to celebrate it and all the exceptional people who are farmers. And so we figured it'd be the perfect timing to dive into our first ag chat and kind of just talk about, you know, how it's such a small portion of the population, only 2% of the people that's feeding our entire world. So kind of just want to dive into where, you know, you're sourcing information of where, you know, we eat 3 times a day, every day. We grocery shop weekly, bi-weekly. It's something that's a part of our everyday lives and also such a small portion of the population to source information when we have questions about it. So we kind of just wanted to dig into that topic. And it's kind of interesting. We were talking before this. We're kind of in this world of information saturation, and a lot of that's probably because of social media. And, you know, we can Google anything and at our fingertips. We have our phone at our fingertips. We can look up any questions we have about certain things. I do that. But it's interesting with it being such a small portion of the population, where is all this information coming from if it's only 2% of the people that are out there growing our food, just making sure we're being very, you know, mindful of where we're sourcing this information when we do have questions.
Yeah, and to get into it, so a big part of what we want to talk about with this episode, like Haley said, only 2% of the population is a part of agriculture and production agriculture, but a lot of times, especially like as we're scrolling through social media and everything, we see questions about food or claims about food, but it's not always sourcing it from the hands that feed you or the people that produce it. But I wanted to kind of start with, I don't know the right way to phrase this. I have a phrase for it and it's escaping my mind, but I've had this conversation with other people where it's not society's fault that they don't know the answers to these questions, or it's not people's fault, it's society's fault that they don't know the answers to these questions, because, you know, when it was our grandparents' age, so many more people were involved in production agriculture, so you had more of a closer tie to producing food. However, as we've gone generation to generation, we've all lost that connection. But it's not that individual's fault that they lost that connection, it's society's fault. And not in a bad way, it's just that society has shifted from everyone being on the farm to having other jobs, other occupations, other ways of life. And so I think I kind of want to start this conversation too by saying, if you have these questions, like, I am a happy person to be able to answer those questions. And like, I think sometimes in agriculture, I see people maybe getting offended by people asking these questions. But for me, to dive into my own agriculture story is like, I didn't know the answers to these questions until I became involved in production agriculture. And so I definitely empathize with people that have these questions, because you don't know what you don't know. And you're going to have to be able to find that resource. And like, I didn't know, like I said, answers to these questions until I became intimately involved in it. And so if you have questions, we're happy to answer these questions for you, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to sometimes remember, if we didn't grow up in agriculture, if you didn't have the foot in the door with agriculture, what misconceptions would we believe? I always think about that when I'm walking around the grocery store. There are so many really cool products, and I'm a sucker for marketing. And a lot of these products have really catchy aesthetic marketing. And if I wasn't involved in agriculture and I didn't grow up in the dairy industry, I would so buy into it because it's good and there's no one telling me different.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I actually made a reel about this over the summer of like going through the grocery store and looking at the labels. And with my corporate job, I worked in marketing too. And so I just have like, I don't know, I use my marketing mindset a lot. And I'm like, well, no wonder you would market it like this, because you're trying to get sales. And so a lot of it too is reading past the labels. But let's dive into a little bit more about the food we eat, how it's produced, and some different claims maybe we've seen.
Haley, you are someone who, of course, grew up in agriculture and dairy, but you're now in the world of recipes, food blogging, and you're reaching a lot of people outside of agriculture. And so I'm sure you can empathize with these people of they want to understand, but they don't necessarily know what should I be thinking about, worried about, asking questions about.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And like one thing about me is I'm like an observer. Like I love reading through the comments on things, seeing what type of questions people are asking or what they're saying or what they're like how strong their response is to different things. I don't know. It's, what kind of baffles me is when I'm sick, I go to urgent care. When my car's in rough shape, I take it to the shop. When I'm not going to let my diesel mechanic highlight my blonde hair, like I just go to the correct people to get that information, or I'm not going to listen to a food blogger on which, like, codes to highlight my hair on. Just so it's interesting how the food world, people are so like open to absorbing and taking information from kind of just anyone. So I think that's very interesting of how we became like less picky about where we receive information from when it comes into food. And I guess the sad part is too when I see people throwing out really extreme or outrageous claims about food production or different practices that you can, is out of their wheelhouse. And just seeing like a strong or kind of scared reaction in the comments of people being like, I had no idea this was the case, like I'm never gonna, buy this again. And now they're ultimately having to go buy a more expensive product that maybe they can't afford. So um, it's a lot of extreme emotions involved for sure.
Yeah, a lot of fear mongering with food, a lot of scare tactics because food is something that everyone has to consume, right? Nutrition is common across the board for everyone in terms of we all need it. It's something that's incorporated into our everyday lives. And as we've seen the internet blow up, social media, I think people are continuing to realize fear works, scarcity sells, and the louder they can spread this misinformation, whether it's true or not, whether they're bullshitting or not, it's going to get a reaction from people and it's going to help grow their platform. Again, whether it's built on truth or not.
That is so true. And I think let's dive into, we all pulled from different resources of things that we saw this past week that was a bit of misinformation about things that we are all intimately involved in. And so it's just interesting to be an observer of that like wrong information.
And there is a lot of it. Bullshit.
Of all the BS. All the BS, yeah.
We like sought it out. These are just things that we run into as three young girls scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. And I'm sure a lot of other people that are listening can relate to this when you're scrolling through something and it just makes you go like, ugh, like this is so incorrect. And that can be about anything. It doesn't even need to be about farming or agriculture. It can be like my sister's a physician assistant. And if she sees something about healthcare that's absurd, like that's, really infuriating and frustrating. It can be about anything.
Yeah. And I think it goes to show how you mentioned we didn't necessarily seek these things out. They just pop up because it happens so often. A lot of us probably have algorithms that lean a little bit more towards the factual science-based people who know what they're talking about. And even still, we're coming across these things all the time. And something that popped up on my radar and actually came from Shmem, but a really popular podcaster. And I actually follow her Instagram on my personal page. Her podcast is the Skinny Confidential, and she has a podcast with her husband, him and her. And she recently talked about a lot of life hacks, how she really hacks her morning routine, because I think actually just her day routine, because this woman really is on top of her game in a lot of different ways, and she is a mom. And what she said in a recent episode, we loved it, but also there's a little bit of misinformation about it. She talked about raw milk. And I want to say that first, I love that she's promoting real dairy. She's promoting real meat on her podcast, on her platforms. She literally talked about in this episode about how she eats bowls of meat throughout the day. And I said, I love that. And she talked about before her workouts, something that she really loves to do now is have a really big cup of coffee. And on top, she said very specifically, she puts about 2 inches of raw milk on top. I know it's so specific. And I love this because it's incorporating milk. And she even said in the episode, and I texted it to Schmemp and Haley because I loved the quote so much and I had to remember it. She said, I prefer it right now, as in raw milk, over almond milk, which is crazy because I was an almond milk girl. So we are all in support of whatever gets ladies into the real dairy world. I am in support of it. But she really seemed to switch over strictly because it was raw milk, not necessarily regular milk. And when she's talking about raw milk and why it's such a good pre workout addition to her coffee, is because it has a really amazing ratio of fats, proteins, and carbs, which is so true. But that is not only relevant to raw milk. Regular milk, pasteurized milk, the milk that you're going to buy in the store has the exact same ratio of nutrients. It's an incredible nutrient powerhouse. It has 13 essential nutrients. And again, it has a really wonderful ratio of the protein, the carbs, and the fats. And so I think it is just so important to reiterate to people that pasteurized milk, the milk that you buy in the store, is just as high of quality and is extremely nutrient dense, because it's not just seeing it in this podcast about raw milk and really putting that on a pedestal. It's something that is really trending right now, something that I'm getting questions about, DMs about, comments about. And again, if it's getting more people to drink milk, I love that. But raw milk is not superior to regular milk. If you want to drink that, if you have a safe source to get it from, we can't tell you what to do. We love you consuming dairy, but I really like pasteurized milk. It just reduced the risk a little bit more. And again, it's still going to have an incredible nutrient profile. And it's still cool. It's still hip. It's still aesthetic. I know maybe it's not as bougie as the raw milk, but it is still just as nutrient dense. And you may see some information online about pasteurization kills nutrients, it kills important enzymes. But in the grand scheme of things, that is such a small potential thing to worry about that you're still getting in 13 essential nutrients when you're drinking 8 ounces of milk.
Yeah, I love listening to their podcast, their Him and Hers podcast. And when we were I was listening to that episode, I think on Saturday morning, and I was just listening to all her life hacks. And then that part came, and I'm not even joking you. As soon as she said the raw milk and then a ratio, I hit pause and I immediately went to my notes and I was like, we have got to talk about this, because that's something. So I used to work in the dairy checkoff too, and that was something that we would always talk about, is the perfect ratio that milk has. And it's such great benefits. So the ratio of protein, fat, and carbs isn't going to be changed between pasteurized milk and raw milk. I think that's something else too, because that's what she was highlighting, is that ratio is that's not what that is. Excuse me if I could talk. That is not what is going to change in between pasteurized milk and raw milk. The only thing that's going to change is if it's unpasteurized or pasteurized, not the ratio of the nutrients. So disclaimer there. But when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, we have got to talk about this, because the wellness girlies are going to listen to that and they're going to get into that. And I'm a wellness girly too. We all are. And it's important. But what's important is that it doesn't have to be raw milk to get that ratio. All milk. All cow's milk.
Yes.
All cow's milk, yes. It's almost like the kind of superiority thing of insinuating that raw milk's better than the other, and how many people is that going to leave thinking, oh my gosh, now I have to go figure out where I'm going to go get raw milk, because I mean, like you said, do what works for you and your budget and your life goals on what you want to consume, but don't make people feel like the gallon jug they're getting at Aldi's is inferior to what she has sitting on top of her coffee.
Yeah, I'm an Aldi queen.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I'm like, let me just get my Festival Foods, which is a Midwest, I think it's only in Wisconsin, maybe, brand of milk.
Exactly.
But speaking of labels, that is the perfect segue into what I see. Emily, like you mentioned earlier, is that she also talked about how she eats a lot of meat, which again, love all the love for the meat, the dairy. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. This is just something we notice in wellness speak too, is that people will be like, when they're buying milk or when they're buying beef, is they're only buying something that has certain label claims like pasture raised or grass finished, grass raised, like all those different claims. And we sell beef direct to consumer from our farm. That's my like little baby that I have on our operation. And a conscious decision that I made when we started doing our direct to consumer beef business is to not use all of these labels, because a huge fear of mine is that somebody is going to see, because there's often a higher price tag associated with these different products that have these different label claims. And I'm not to just say that sometimes those higher price points aren't justified, because there are different amount of work that goes into these different things. However, because of that higher price tag, I have this huge fear that people are going to see this meat product with this label and that higher price tag, and then if they're not able to afford that, then they're going to be like, well, I can't afford this certain label and this certain type of beef, so I can't buy beef for my family. And as we all know on this podcast, those of us that are talking here, is that beef is also an incredibly nutrient-packed powerhouse, lots of protein, all the things, and it's a super good food for people to be able to feed and nourish their families and help them get that protein that they need. And so, like I said, I just have this fear that people are going to see that and be like, I can't buy it. And also, when people are like, you need to buy directly from the farmer, like our beef from our farm, some goes to our direct to consumer beef program, but unfortunately, I just don't have that big of a customer base for it to all go to that. And so some of it does go to the beef that's in the grocery store. And so it's still getting the same amount of care from us, whether it's in the grocery store or whether it's in our direct to consumer beef business. And that's the same to say for a lot of different beef producers, or all the different beef producers here in the US too, regardless of how they sell their product, whether it's going to the grocery stores or going to their own business. It's all being well taken care of. It's still the same great product for you. It's just sold at different price points. But I just have a fear of people being like, we can't buy it from you, and so therefore I'm not gonna buy beef at all. So I like price my beef then at a more reasonable price, I would say, and I don't choose to put labels on it. The only label I say when I'm marketing it to our direct community is saying locally raised, because that's what it is. We're 5 minutes outside of town, so it is locally raised. But beyond that, I don't really put any other labels on it, and that's a decision I've made, and I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah, and I wanted to just throw in a little bit I saw on Instagram yesterday, actually, from Brandy Buzzard. She's also a beef producer. She's in the Midwest. And she just had a really great part of her post. And it just said, Dear farmers and ranchers, if you're using fear to market your beef as better than grocery store beef or other production methods, you're no better than Chipotle. I said what I said. And I was like, oh, go off, girl. Because like we've talked about even before this, we want farmers and ranchers to do what they need to do to thrive and support their business, support their families, support their rancher farm. But I don't love when farmers or ranchers have to tear down other farmers and ranchers or production practices in the process of selling their product. I think you can still have an amazing product and sell it and market it in that way without having to create fear mongering around the way others do it.
Yeah, I think it's just important to remember, and we all had this discussion, that we wanted to make it clear that farms and ranches are business operations, and they need to be, in order to stay viable and sustainable, to stay in business for their future generations. And each business operation, whether it be for agriculture, hair salons, I'm using the hair example a lot, or like accounting, anything, they all find their niche, they all find their lane, they all find certain ways to market and brand themselves. And that's what makes a business viable and makes them who they are. And I think it's just important that we remember when we walk into the grocery store that that's really all it is. There's a lot of different avenues carved out within food of different production practices you can use, and, different regions where it's grown. And just understand that, we're all pushed into it. Just choose a lane that works for your budget, works for your family's goal, your, social goals, whatever that is. We have a lot to choose from. And that's the beautiful part about U.S. agriculture, is we have so many choices. Like for me, I buy a lot of mostly conventional food, but I buy organic yogurt because I want to put my hard-earned dollars towards supporting a specific business because I like that business. And I love that I have that decision to choose where I spend my income and where to support it. And I buy organic spring mix because I like the container that it comes in better than conventional. Like that's purely the only but I love that I have the choice, and I love that there's so many different agricultural, different farms and how they make things. It's cool that there's a lot of different ways to produce our food, and it's just great that we have the variety.
It's just, I want consumers to know that whether you are able to purchase solely from the grocery store or if you're able to source it from that specific farm or ranch, like you're still ultimately getting the same great product. It's just like Haley said, where you choose to put your dollars.
And kind of on the label discussion is how I chose which social media posts I chose to discuss today. And mine is from Coach James Middleton, and I only follow him because he's engaged to an influencer that I follow before. So I, of course, had to follow him. And I do get, some information that I listen to. I'm like, okay, this makes sense around working out and athletics and whatnot. But he's doing a series called Supermarket Swaps. And granted, he is international. He's from England in the UK, but yeah, the last one, it's just entertaining to listen to. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I take everything with a grain of salt. Like, I don't know what this guy's education or experience is around food production, so I'm not gonna like take it that seriously. But this last one was on shrimp and fish, and saying that you should look for farm raised and don't purchase farm raised, and only purchase ocean caught. And this is kind of the trend for a lot of his supermarket swap videos is buy the one that's $5 to $10 to $15 more expensive. And I don't have an issue with it. Whatever. It's entertaining. You're providing entertainment, but it comes from a very privileged place, in my opinion. And I'm not tearing the guy down. I enjoy, his content, but to say that tell someone you need to purchase this one that's more expensive. And I don't really like the tactics too of like, it's so much more healthier for you. You're bringing harm to your body by not. Well, guess what, dude? I have an agricultural science degree and I buy farm raised salmon because it still provides protein to me. It still provides micronutrients to me. I'm not going to spend more money on that because I can take the money I save and buy myself a fall candle that week at grocery. To just kind of disarm that farm raised seafood doesn't provide anything is totally false and very privileged. So yeah, that one was one I called out, and yeah, it was an interesting one. I think it just goes to show, and I was thinking about this too, now that we've started this podcast, of we're in this big internet and influencer era of just the power of your words. And once we have the internet, like I was just thinking what we share here on the podcast, like once we say it, it's out there for people to listen to and to consume and absorb and have a reaction to. I just wish people would maybe be more conscious of, and I need to work on that too, I guess, what the information you put out there, someone's going to take it as you take your word for it. So there's a lot of power in that, and just making sure you don't abuse it.
Yeah. And I think it ties back a little bit into you don't know what you don't know in terms of people promoting these type of swaps, these type of products. They're not necessarily doing it in a malicious way. And if they think, hey, this is really fueling my body better, they like it, it makes them feel great, awesome. But like you said, Haley, it is coming from such a privileged standpoint that so many of these influencers, these wellness gurus, don't realize that such a large chunk of the population is struggling to just get food on the table. And then you're going to make these people fear conventional produce, conventionally grown dairy, meat, whatever it may be, that you are scaring them from even then eating a vegetable. You're scaring them from getting a quality protein source because you are making it seem that the only way it's worth consuming is if you're buying the most expensive product. And no matter how that farmer or rancher is producing the food, they're doing it in the same way of caring for that product, caring for that animal, and doing it in a way that they are passionate about and they really care about, because those farmers and ranchers are also consuming the same food. They're living on the same land. They're not just going to throw it out the window, not care about it when they're on this planet and want to have a healthy planet as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so important. I think too, I'm trying to think if there's ever been a time where I've been duped by misinformation by someone, like not in the agricultural field, maybe by like ordering an Amazon link and it came back as junk and it's like, well, you can't take everyone's word for it.
Yes, I had that happen with an Abercrombie, I think it was Abercrombie or Free People dupe this summer on Amazon. Somebody sent the link and they were like, oh my gosh, this is like the best dupe ever. I got it. Horrible. Horrible quality. Oh, I hated it. So don't fall for the things. I think also a good way to wrap this up too. So I position myself on social media as your farmer friend, but I think all of us here are your farm related friends. So if you have questions for us about your food, about the people who produce it, we are more than happy to be that answer, be that resource for you. And like I said in our first episode, if we don't have the answer, we will find somebody who does, because we have a wealth of knowledge of people in our corner that all help produce food in this country.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something we want to do as like a takeaway. We've just spent this whole time telling you, make sure that you're getting your information from the right source, and that 2% of the whole US population that's growing our food, well, how do we find them? And I even empathize with that of like, ask a farmer. It's like, how do I find them? Okay, let me just go ask one. Like, I don't think of people living in Chicago or New York City. It's like, okay, where am I going to find a farmer to go ask them so I can know what I should know what I should know. So we are going to put in the show notes, and also we're just going to quickly do some shout outs of some people that we like to get our information from. And like I said at the beginning, I get, I go to the mechanic, I go to the bank when I need, money stuff. You just go to the right person. So from the food space, two accounts that I really like. One is the Moody Foodie. And I just love his vibe. He talks about like, I love a nice 5-star New York City restaurant with an exquisite cocktail list, but I also love a number 6 at McDonald's and a dive bar. And if like Walmart on cheese is the only kind you can get or afford, it still slaps, like no matter what. I just love his messaging. Just do what you can do and enjoy all the things. And then Rachel B. Martin, she's another great one. She actually, I think her degree's in chemistry, and she's huge on she's a great value girl. She gets her groceries from Walmart, and sometimes I get hate from people on like, oh, that's, why would you eat canned or frozen foods? And she's like, because it's what I can afford. I can't afford, a X, Y, and Z diet. And, canned vegetables are better than none. So she's a great one to follow too for food.
From the farm standpoint, some farmers to follow. We all compiled a list because we all know different farmers, but I'll share it since I'm the farmy person, I guess. Iowa Dairy Farmer is a great person, especially on TikTok. He shares a lot on there. New York Farm Girls, Modern Day Farm Chick, my fellow Wisconsin girlie. Another Wisconsin girl is Cranberry Chats, or Amber, and they are actually harvesting cranberries right now here in Wisconsin, and Amber is involved in that, so check out her account if you want to learn something that you might not think of completely as a food option, but cranberries.
I had no idea cranberries were harvested. I just have to say, I'm learning so much from her. Like, I watch her videos, I'm like, I had no idea. Like, it's in a field? I thought it was in a bog or something. Like, I had no idea how it's done.
Yeah, it's wild. It's so cool to see. And she does ASMR, and I love her ASMR of it. Another beef person that is one of my friends and that I really enjoy following all of her content for beef is Andrea, or That Fit Advocate is how she goes online. And then myself, is I try to share a mixture of farm stuff, friendship, food stuff, helping you be understanding of agriculture, but I try and share it from like a girl's perspective, because I'm like, again, not trying to attract the creepy dudes when I talk about agriculture. I'm trying to help people like us get more information about our food.
I love that. I love that everyone can provide a little bit of a different perspective. And we know, of course, there are so many other amazing farm and ranch accounts out there. And if y'all have recommendations, reach out to us on social and let us know. This is a small list, so we know what compiles a very big one. And I'm going to dive into a little bit more of the nutrition and science side of things. But before I do that, I want to mention as well, with some of the accounts that we mentioned, you're going to see different sizes and different types of operation. And that is not a bad thing. I think so often people put farmers into two camps of, oh, you have to be a small little 50-cow dairy, or you're either then a monster raising thousands of animals and then you're not taking care of your animals. But no matter the size, farmers are taking care of their animals. They're taking care of their land because, like we said earlier, they're living on this planet, consuming the same foods as well. And so I think it is so important to know that big does not equal bad. I feel like that's something we have to reiterate every episode because it is such a message that's pushed by a lot of anti-ag corporations. And I pulled up the stat as well, just to prove this point. 96% of farms and ranches in the US are family owned and operated. So that is just a reiteration as well that the food you're going to be buying, no matter whether it's a farmer's market or Walmart or Whole Foods, you're likely getting that from a family owned and operated farmer ranch. So had to put that plug in there because I think it's something we're all passionate about. And now I can dive into some of my recommendations of really great accounts to follow. These are going to be accounts that really break through the bullshit of nutrition because we know that there's a lot of it out there. And these are also some of the accounts that call out the accounts that we talked about earlier. So Food Science Babe, she's wonderful. She's a literal scientist. She's a great follow. Steph Grosso, dietitian. Abby's Kitchen. The Nutrition Tea, Sustainable Dish. Sustainable Dish is a really interesting combination. She's a registered dietitian, but she talks a lot about sustainability within agriculture and promoting animal agriculture. So she is a very, very informational person to follow and also share with other people as a resource. And then two of our fellow dairy gals, Nutrition at its Roots and the legendary dietitian. We will drop all of these in the notes because we know we're throwing a lot of names at y'all. And you're probably not going to be able to let it all sink in because I'm having trouble with it even.
Right. The one thing I want to call out quickly too about the Nutrition Tea is she talks a lot on her social media about kind of what we were talking about earlier of like the labels and making sure that like, you know, just because you're only able to afford maybe something in a can or that's frozen, like it's still good. It's good for you. And I think she talks a lot about like the disparities between like income levels and stuff and like what's the word when you're like looking down on people?
Bird's eye view?
No, like you're like judging people.
Yes, you're very, oh gosh, I can't think of the word, but I know what you mean. Like a privileged kind of viewpoint,
Yes.
but
yeah, like she talks about like you're like viewing things from a privileged point of view and stuff when you are saying things in a certain way.
yes.
So I really like her because she calls out a lot of that stuff and I think it's necessary.
Clever.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, we'll drop those in the show notes. And like, what great resources! I mean, to just see, it is cool to see your food being grown every day. Like, I love that. Love seeing what farmers and ranchers are up to every day, and then heading to the grocery store and getting my food. It's really cool to be involved that way.
Yeah. So let's head into our weekly Q&A session. So as a reminder, we are going to put a question box and prompts because we want to get questions from you guys, the listeners, to be able to answer. And this is definitely our very girl talk conversation where we're going to give you our perspective on anything you might have going on. And so the first question that we got submitted to us was talking about how do you get over the fear of judgment from others? I think a lot of our followers definitely come from small communities like we do, or they come from agriculture is definitely a small community too. Like people just know everyone. And this is a question I've got a lot when I go to like rural events where I'm speaking with women and stuff is like, somebody always asks, like, how do you get over the fear of getting judged by others? And it's a valid question, but also something I think we can all provide insight on. What are your guys' thoughts?
I love this question because I think we're all going to be able to bring a little bit of a different perspective in terms of we all have been raised differently, had different experiences. Maybe we all have different levels of thickness of skin, or as they say. And so for me, one of my favorite quotes has been, don't take criticism from someone you want to take advice from. And this is something that I love to tell other women because it is so easy for us to get feedback, whether we want it or not, with the internet, right? So we're getting feedback from strangers on the internet. We're getting feedback from people in our daily lives. And it can be so hard to decipher that of what should I be listening to or not. And so when I've been growing my business, Dare Girl Fitness, there's a lot of noise. And that's been one of my favorite quotes of don't take criticism from someone you want to take advice from. It doesn't mean it doesn't suck when someone's mean to you, but it helps it roll off the back a little bit easier. And something that I really like to reiterate to the women that we work with, especially in their health and fitness journey, because we know everyone has an opinion on what we look like or what we eat, is if someone is talking shit about you, if someone is trying to bring you down or make you feel less than, it's because they feel insecure. They feel not good enough and they want to bring you down to that level. Misery loves company. And when someone feels insecure within themselves and they see you thriving, succeeding, or doing what they are too scared to do, they want to bring you down to that level, maliciously or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was having this conversation too with somebody where when you hear somebody talking about you or saying something, like that says more about them than it does about you. And you kind of just said that.
Yeah, I would echo everything Emily just said, obviously. And I think it's interesting to get our perspectives because all three of us had to make the scary leap to have a social media platform for our businesses. And we're really putting it all out there for judgment and for people to see and form opinions on. And I mean, echoing everything Emily said. But I'll just add that once you make the leap of just not caring anymore, there's like a whole community of people ready to like catch you and support you and cheer you on. And like two of those girls are on the call too, because I think you guys like with some of my first followers even, and you're just like, yes, like this is awesome, like go, go, go. And like the noise becomes really quiet when you find a community and the people are out there. There's so many people that are just like, yeah, go off. Like, who cares? I have like, can't tell you the amount of times I've called either of you about like, oh, like I feel dumb doing this. And like, why? Who cares? Just like do it. And it's like, yeah, you're the people I want to get advice from. So there's a whole community of people waiting to do that. And two, it just became exhausting to like always try to worry about, oh, should I not say this on my stories? Because what if I offend this person from college? Or like, what are people gonna think about me this? I'm like, who? Like, okay, I just can't worry about it anymore. It's just, I'm over it. It's just, they can like, my social page is my space. If you don't, it's like, I think of it as my home. And you can think of, if it's not a social page, your peace is your home. And if someone's bothering it, don't let them into your home. Like, they can leave your space. Just do what makes you happy, and you wouldn't let someone that's rude to you into your home. Like, keep it, just, yeah, that's what I have to say.
When I get asked this question, I'm like, sometimes I feel like I'm not the best person to give that piece of advice to or to share my advice on it because I just simply don't care. Like, I don't know. I've just grown up, I think, based off, like, I don't know. You guys probably also experience this too of like in elementary school and middle school, there's always gossip. There's always just like things that are not the kindest that are said. And I think I just kind of went with it when my mom told me those who mind, I always mess this up. Those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind.
Oh, I love that. I never heard that.
And so with that being said is like, the people that are my friends, the people that are my family that support me, like those are the only people that matter to me. And the people that like feel the need to be judgmental and rude, I'm sorry, but you simply don't matter. Like I've just gotten to that point where I just like, it's not worth it for me to dwell on the negative and for me to, well, the other thing going like on like a more woo-woo tangent of that too is like, I don't want to put negative energy out into the world. And if I like hear those bad things and then I'm like in a foul mood, like I'm putting negative energy out into the world. But if I hear it and I just like brush it off my shoulder, then I can still have that positive energy that's what I'm putting out into the world. And positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity. And so, yeah, I've learned to not care.
Yeah.
Another thing that my mom taught me, that's another phrase, is when I was younger, she taught me this, and she was also an elementary school teacher, so if that helps you of like where this is going, is she would say, if somebody was saying like mean words to me, is I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. And so that's what I have to say to all haters.
Great.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Bye.
Core of it all is find your group that are ready to cheer you on. And if you're struggling with that, you've got 3 right here. And we can't wait to watch you do all the things you want to do. And if you're ever feeling low about it, come talk to us and we'll will amp you up, because that was my crappy last podcast episode. Was I'm super sensitive. I got a mean pot like Instagram comment. That was my crappy of the week. And before we recorded, you guys were like, oh, that's funny. Like, I've got like someone's called me this before, so that's funny. And I just like felt so lighthearted about it. It's just surround yourself with good people that, yeah, make it easier.
Well, and the other thing, if you like, obviously people will naturally just judge other people, but you have to think of like, why are you judging somebody for being happy and doing something that makes them happy? Like, I would rather cheer somebody on and be like, you're happy, I'm so proud of you, like, good for you, than judge them for doing something that makes them happy.
Right? So
exactly.
I don't understand it, but it's not for me to understand.
Yeah. And if someone that you love does have a disagreement or they are being a little bit of a turd, that's where you just have an open, honest discussion with them. Sometimes when people are that way, it may not be malicious. They may just not understand. So have the conversation. And if it still turns into a not great situation, avoid that person if you can.
Yeah. Okay. Should we wrap up this episode?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited for this part.
Yeah, our weekly obsession.
Yes. Okay. So who wants to start with their weekly obsession? Each week we'll do a hot take or obsession. And so this week, I feel like we all had some really fun obsessions. And
so this maybe is a surprise, but I've never been to a Trader Joe's before. And I had my first Trader Joe's experience last week with my friend Emma, and it blew me away. It was really amazing. And all this week I am just consuming all the Trader Joe things, the soup dumplings, the dark chocolate covered pretzels, the double chocolate croissants. I'm glad I don't live super close to one, is why I've never been to one. So, yeah, it's the tits. I get why Trader Joe's is really cool.
I haven't been to one either, and now I'm jealous, and I feel like I need to go find one.
You need to go. It's fun during the fall season or winter, but fall, they go all out. Honestly, they might already be sold out of a lot of their stuff. I think I went last year in October, not even that far into fall. They were sold out of half of their pumpkin items, and I was furious. So just be aware if you decide to go.
What was your favorite thing that you bought so far, Haley?
Oh my gosh. The soup dumplings, the double chocolate there, yeah, that definitely.
Yum.
That sounds delicious. Mine kind of goes off the food obsession. So Aldi is different than Trader Joe's, but I feel like they have some fun finds similar to Trader Joe's. So if y'all aren't near Trader Joe's, Aldi surprisingly has a lot of fun fall items. And my weekly obsession is their pumpkin pecan cookies. They are so freaking good, y'all. They have no right being this good. And I had to get them off my counter because I just kept staring at them and thinking about them. And all foods fit, but I was ready to eat this entire carton of cookies, and they are just really, really good. So highly recommend them.
Yummy. Yeah, I do have an Aldi's in the town that I go grocery shopping in, so maybe I'll have to beep up over there and check out their stuff.
Very fun. Very worth it, these cookies specifically. And I know your weekly obsession, Shmem, is a little bit different than the food side of things, but still a wonderful one.
My weekly obsession, I think, changed in my mind like 5 times over the last 24 hours when we were talking and texting each other back and forth. But I came to my final conclusion today while I was showering and getting ready for the day, because it is my Rio de Janeiro deodorant, body wash, lotion, and body mist. Everyone, like, all the influencers share about it, and I was like, okay, is it really worth the hype? Like, come on, it can't really be worth the hype. So I was like, I'm gonna order the whole shebang, try it once, and see what it is. Yeah, I'm hooked. Yes, but I don't get the orange. So the Brazilian Bum Bum is the orange color. I get the pink color of their stuff. And it smells so good. And it lasts, like, the deodorant lasts. Over the summer, I was riding my horse, and I had put the deodorant on that morning, and it was later that evening. This is very descriptive. I'm so sorry. But I was riding my horse, and as I was jumping, my horse, I was like, my arms are like up here and my arms are up, and I like got a whiff of it and I was like, oh, it smells delicious. And so it will literally last through the entire day and while riding a horse. So if that like goes to show how good it smells and how good. Yeah. So check out all of our weekly obsessions, I feel like. Well, bye.
Bye.